I'm Nathan Wisnowski, Concurrency's Chief Technology Officer. Concurrency is an organization of change agents. We make a difference, and we partner with businesses on the change that they need right now. Concurrency engages IT operations to build an efficient, capable cloud for the business. It also partners with the business in disruptive change to bring about new revenue and to bring about operational savings. We partner with businesses like Brunswick Corporation on a connected boat platform and migrating them to the cloud. We also partner with businesses like Culver Imaging that are doing AI-enabled distributed warehouses. We partner with businesses like Duff & Phelps that need to engage their customers with modern app platforms. And also engage customers like Rockwell Automation that are doing secure modern workplaces. Concurrency partners with organizations that need change agents and have change agents. We're here to help bring about change that drives new revenue and operational savings in your business. Let's work with each other today.
Thank you, Concurrency. Again, it's thanks to sponsors like them that make this possible. So we really appreciate their support, and thanks everyone for taking your attention for a minute to listen to what they had to say. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into our talk. Welcome everyone. My name is David Patrick. This is a taste of M365 Chicago, brought to us by Veeam. This is my talk, Turning SharePoint Designer Workflows into Power Automate Workflows. Real quick, please join M365 Chicago in supporting Chicago Public Schools through the Children First Fund. So there's a code there. You can click on that, make a donation, and your donation can make a difference. A massive thanks to all the other sponsors: Veeam, AvePoint, Concurrency, Focal Point Solutions, KWiz, Com, Martello, Omnia, Pointfire, Smarter Consulting, Synology. And M365 Chicago is an OTSN conference, so On the Spot Network. Really appreciate all of those folks helping us out. If you have feedback, check out this code. I'll put it up again later. It'll take you to the feedback link. You can give us any tips and tricks you think we can approve. So again, my name's Dave Patrick. I work for a company called Data Systems Analyst, affectionately known as DSA. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, certified solution developer, solution expert. I've been working with SharePoint since 2001 when it was in beta. Anyone remember the beta? If you remember the beta code name that Microsoft had for SharePoint, put it out in the chat. I'd love to see if anyone knows that. Let me make sure I got the chat up to see if anyone pulls that out. Maybe I'll even send a prize out to someone if they get that right. So I take a lot of exams. I'm a big certification junkie, and one of the ones I took a lot of times was Tahoe. Yes, Chris, good job. That is correct. That was quick. Yeah, prizes, right? Yes, we love prizes. Yeah, so Chris, I'll send you out some digital swag. That'll make it easy. Shoot me your email or your Twitter handle or something, and we'll touch base. MCP Dead is my favorite Microsoft certification that I obtained. It stands for Microsoft Certified Professional Developer, Enterprise Application Developer. But I know someone at Microsoft saw the exams I was taking and decided to punk me by coming up with an acronym that they thought I wouldn't want to show around. But jokes on them, I wear that one loud and proud. I work for the U.S. Army. I'm a DoD contractor, Aberdeen Proving Ground. I do customer relations, I do training, and I do administration, design, development of not only SharePoint, but also SQL Server, ASP.NET, all the whole Microsoft stack. I have a user group, Mad SharePoint, and we're virtual now that the pandemic hit and forced us to go virtual. We were hybrid even before that. We were using Teams to do in-person plus remote attendees, but now we've been doing fully remote, but it's been cool. We've been having people from all over the world attend our monthly lunch sessions. So definitely check us out at madsharepoint.com. Plug for my company, they make me, back when we were in person, they would fly me out to some of these things. They're still supporting me, but they've been around for a little while. So since 1963, they do everything: collaboration, cybersecurity, identity management, network engineering. If you're looking for a job and you're a U.S. citizen, check out DSAinc.com, and we got just tons of career opportunities. I saw just the other day we were looking for a Java developer in Hawaii. So I keep telling them I know JavaScript, but apparently that's not the same as Java. So I'm still in Maryland, not in Hawaii, but maybe I'll try to change that eventually. Again, check out Mad SharePoint. We love to give out free swag. We're doing it digitally now. Hopefully back in person soon, but check us out either way. All right, so what are the three things I want you guys to take away from this session? Number one, how to create a Power Automate flow, right? If you're a SharePoint developer and working with traditional 2010 workflows or 2013 workflows, Power Automate's this whole new thing. I just want you to know how to get started and how to create one. We'll talk about some ways to get started. We'll also want you to know what triggers are available, so how you can trigger different flows manually, automate it, and then what actions are available. Can you send an email? Can you start an approval? What are some of those things? And then as we go along, I'll mention some tips and tricks, things to watch out for, the gotchas. Those are the three things I hope that you'll get when we're finished this session. So let's start by talking about those old school SharePoint Designer workflows. You had the 2010 on-prem, you had the 2013 on-prem, and you've got your 2013 online. These are what I affectionately call the SharePoint Designer workflows. So you open up SharePoint Designer and you could create any of these workflows. SharePoint Designer, our old friend that's been beaten up a little bit. Back in 2010, we used to have the whole GUI design service, and then they yanked that out, and so, but it's still limping along. Oh, Ralph says if you want to know about licensing, yes, we will. I'm glad you threw that out there, Ralph. Awesome. But yeah, Designer, it's an old friend. They're trying to put it down gently. I still do a lot of on-premises work. We're actually at the Army, as you might imagine, we're not quite bleeding edge. We do a lot. We're working on migrating to the cloud, and so there's a lot of this. Okay, here's what we had. How do we put it into the cloud? And so I'm still opening up Designer to read my workflows, and I'm still maintaining workflows. So there's still a lot of work done in that. And then for those of you that used to do those server-side solutions, Visual Studio was a tool for us SharePoint developers where we could actually create, visual web parts, and we could do other types of extensions. So, tried and true tool for extending SharePoint. Now we've kind of moved on for anyone that's doing SharePoint development. Now it's more Visual Studio Code and the SharePoint framework and HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and all sorts of JavaScript libraries. But I digress. Let's go back to what we're focusing on for this session, which is how to take some of those existing workflows, the 2013 workflows, the 2010 workflows. So if you haven't seen SharePoint Designer, this is a typical connecting to a website. And in this one, I'm actually connected to my Mad SharePoint, which is a SharePoint online site. But I've had this site so long that I actually did go in there and create some 2010 workflows back in the day. You can see this was from 2015 when I could still create these 2010 workflows, and I had some 2013 workflows. WYSIWYG, yeah, what you see is what you get. This is the goal, right? Take these older workflows and then replace that functionality with, and it'd be nice if there was a button. I wish I could just right-click this and say save as a Power Automate flow, but no such luck. We have to rebuild them. When you go on, now, if you're on-prem, you can still have them, right? On my on-prem, I still have all my old school 2010 workflows. In fact, some would say that they run better than the 2013 workflows that I have on-prem. But most of us are moving to the cloud now. We're all online, and not only were the 2010 workflows deprecated, so that you couldn't add any new ones or make changes, they've been yanked, right? So the ones that I used to have are no longer there, and that's what I'm showing you here. That new feedback one is a 2013, but those, if I back up 2 slides here, these 2010s that used to be there, the my approval and the reuse me, those are I think those were 20. No, where's the 2010s? Here's a 2010 email new feedback. That's not there. There's a 2013 version, but the 2010 gone. So that's the current landscape. The 2010, the 2013 workflows on premise, they're there, but we're moving away from that. Info designers moving away from InfoPath Designer. We're moving away from SharePoint Designer. We're moving away from. It's all about Power Automate and Power Apps, and trying to recreate. There's no just, hey, save this as the new stuff. We've got to really rebuild and recreate and start fresh and start new. There's a quick video that I think is really helpful, so I'm going to play this real quick that introduces folks to Power Automate. One thing I think you'll notice during the video is that it doesn't say the word SharePoint a lot, which is a little worrying to me. But well, here, let's take a quick look.
These days, there's a cloud service to do just about anything. Problem is, there's no good way to get your favorite apps to talk to each other, to connect them, and automate the tasks that are so time-consuming. Or is there? With Microsoft Power Automate, whether you start from a template or create your own multi-step flow across several apps, it's simple. Why constantly check email when you can get a text message whenever someone important emails you? Automating that means you can use that time to do other things. And Power Automate can really help get things connected. Say someone tweets about your company. Set up a flow that follows them, sends a nice reply, adds them to a spreadsheet that gets emailed to you for your approval, then adds their contact to Salesforce or Dynamics 365. You can also get and manage approvals using Power Automate on the web, your phone, or even right from your inbox. And this streamlined approval process works with data in SharePoint, Microsoft Dynamics 365, Twitter, MailChimp, and over 100 other services. And with the Power Automate app, you can monitor, manage, and create flows from anywhere. For tasks that need to happen now, like instantly blocking out the next hour in your calendar, we've designed flows that start with the tap of a button. How about that? That's technology talking together, working smarter, so you can work less and do more.
Awesome, thanks. Appreciate it.
These days,
there we go. Yeah, Joseph, appreciate the YouTube version. I was going to say I've got the links built into the slides, so when I make the slides available later, and you could just click on the slide and you'll get that same YouTube link. I think sometimes those videos have a bit of a lag through Teams, so sorry if it didn't play nicely for someone. But it's just a quick video. And the big takeaway from that video was, hey, Flow is Flow. It used to be called Flow. Right now it's Power. Now it's a Flow inside of Power Automate. It's got this potential to do all this connectivity, all this integration between different apps. But what about SharePoint? Where's the SharePoint focus for us SharePoint folks? If you feel a little left out when you don't hear the word, what. So in that same vein, if you go to Microsoft Learn, which is Microsoft's online documentation, and to call it documentation is a little bit of a misnomer. It really is way more than that. It's hands-on labs, sandboxes, tutorials, quick starts. A great resource. If you haven't been to Microsoft Learn, check it out. They had this great module. It's kind of like a college course, Intro to Power Automate. But as you walk through it, you'll see that, again, there's not this focus. The very first example, in fact, I'll bring it up and show it to you real quick, doesn't really deal with SharePoint. So what happens is, I tell people, hey, start learning on Power Automate, go out to Learn, and they start doing. My SharePoint developers do this. I work with about 20 different SharePoint developers, and they're like, Dave, I don't see, I'm seeing Power Apps, I'm seeing integration with Outlook, I'm seeing integration, with other data sources, but where's the specific information to SharePoint? So it's a little tough to find, and that's kind of why I did this talk, is to try to help with that. So how do we, as SharePoint developers, get started? Well, you can certainly go to the Power Automate website, which is flow.microsoft.com. You can also create flows from within SharePoint. Now, this is the key, and this is in my demos. I'll show you a couple of these, because that, I think, really gives you those couple of extra steps getting started, because it creates the connections for you. It knows the context of which site you're in and who you're logged in as, and it helps fill in those blanks. Whereas if you go to the Power Automate website and you try to create a flow from scratch, you have to fill all that information in. In fact, I'll show you real quick, give you an idea. Let's jump out here to our website, and let's just go to flow.microsoft.com. Go take us to the Power Automate website. And if you haven't already logged in, it'll ask you to log in. I did already log in, so it looks like it remembered my credentials. I'm in my Mad SharePoint tenant, which I got for free from Microsoft as part of their M365 developer program. Talk more about that in a minute. So here, when you're doing flows, you can come in here and say, hey, I want to create a flow. And then I'll say, well, what kind of flow do you want? You want a cloud-based flow? Do you want a desktop, which is sort of a new visual type of flow? And there's a whole tool, the Power Automate desktop, that you use to create those using robotic process automation. There's business process flows that deal with Dynamics and CRM and stuff like that. So if I create, say, a cloud-based flow, this is, or this could be a SharePoint-based flow, right? I'll do an automated flow based on some trigger. You'll see there's a whole, it's like, well, give it a name, and then you have to search through all these triggers, and some of them say SharePoint, but some of them say Planner, some of them say Teams, and it kind of makes your head spin, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know where to get started. So again, you can go to the flow.microsoft.com website, the Power Automate website, and start one from scratch. But I don't recommend that. I recommend starting from within SharePoint. And as we saw in the video, you can even do them from your mobile device if you want. don't really recommend that either, but you can. So they want to make sure that all the young kids are always doing stuff on their mobile devices, so that's got to be available. So I mentioned the website, flow.microsoft.com takes you to the Power Automate website, and you can do things like, schedule a meeting with a message sender. You can do adaptive cards to Teams. There's, just a world of possibilities here. It's almost too much because it is a little bit overwhelming. And as I mentioned, with a mobile device, you get a similar type, even though it's, designed for mobile, you get a similar set of choices of all this stuff you can do. And I think part of the reason Microsoft did this, and this is just me, my opinion, is that maybe they were trying to compete with some other automation type sites that are out there, like if this, then that. If you've played with that, it's another automation type service out there, and they have this real cool kind of go in there and set things up and do. And so it's kind of I think this particularly the mobile app is designed to compete with that. But again, I want to focus on, as a SharePoint developer, I'm in my SharePoint site. How do I start creating Power Automate flows from within SharePoint? So this is my example Mad SharePoint site, and I'm in one of my document libraries where I've got a bunch of documents uploaded. And what I want to show here is that under the sort of the new ribbon here, you can find Power Automate. And this one, because of the resolution, and be careful because depending what your resolution is, it may be hidden. And I think I set this one up too so that it would be hidden. You didn't see it right away, right? You've got upload, edit and grid, sync, add OneDrive, export to Excel, and then ... So in this particular view, I had to actually click the ellipsis and then find Power Automates from there, Power Automate from there. Which actually I think in this particular one was under Power Apps. So you might have to dig for Power Automate within SharePoint. So just be aware that it's up there in that ribbon somewhere. You might have to make your resolution smaller or larger, or click and dig a little bit. And they like to move it too. So I'll point out there's a difference in the documentation versus where I found it recently in SharePoint Online. So sometimes SharePoint Online is always up to date. That means sometimes slides and sometimes the documentation is slightly out of date. In this example, we're in a list that just contains feedback. So a custom list with like a title and some additional custom columns. And you can see that the Automate's up there again under the ellipsis. And this is where I could kick off a Power Automate. Notice that this particular example has the old school new feed. This is, how do I know this is a column for a 2013 workflow. And stage 1 is that's one of the default names for stages. I didn't do a whole lot of work renaming this particular one, but I wanted to kind of show you that they actually can live together, right? So this particular list has a 2013 workflow that has the stage of the workflow in the view of the list, but you could also come in here and add a Power Automate workflow. So interesting ways that you can kind of have both worlds sort of living together. So what are some common flows in SharePoint that you want to create and that maybe you want to do in Power Automate? So number one is I hear that people want to send an email, some sort of alert. A new item, feedback is entered into the list. We want the people that are responsible for dealing with that feedback to get an email notification. They want to, if someone says, hey, the website should be all blue, well then Mary, who's a content manager, needs to get an email saying, well, maybe that's a good idea. Let's make it all blue, or no, that's not a good, or somehow respond to that feedback. So that's one demo we're going to do. Another one is starting an approval, right? So I upload a vacation request to a document library, and I want to click on that my new vacation request document and say, will my manager please approve this or reject it? Because Dave, you can't take 80 days of a vacation. Oh, I thought I could. But that's another typical request, is starting an approval in some document in the library. So we'll take a look at that example as well. So the first one, guess what? Microsoft Learn has a tutorial for this where you can go in and you can send an email when a new item is created in a SharePoint list. It does walk you through some required setup for this particular tutorial. So if and I mentioned all my links are built into my slides, so I'll just go ahead and click and bring up this link. So this walks you through step-by-step how to get started with Power Automate in SharePoint. The very first thing under required setup talks about there's a certain list that this particular tutorial wants you to have. It's called a projects list. So it walks you through creating the new project list and adding some data to that project list. Even before that, it also says, hey, it would be helpful if you had access to a SharePoint Online site that this tutorial is expecting. And if you don't have one, there is the which used to be called the Office 365 Developer Program, but it's now called the M365 Developer Program. If I go ahead and open this in a new tab, you'll see what I'm talking about. This is the M365 or Microsoft 365 Developer Program. It's free to join. When you join, you get access to a free, renewable, 90-day E5 developer subscription for up to 25 users. You can even load sample data packs, so you don't have a blank slate when you sign up for this. You can actually get, fake users and an intranet that's already populated and data in your Dynamics if you choose. So it's really, really cool for training, testing things out, and exam preparation. So if Microsoft's got a bunch of new exams out there that are geared towards showing off your skills in Power Automate and such, and it's a must-have for all. Yes, Ralph, I agree, and it's free. I'm very frugal, as I like to call myself. I actually signed up for this 5 or 6 years ago, and every 90 days, as long as you're using your subscription, actually I've got 4 or 5 of them, and as long as you use them, they will renew that. Microsoft will give me an email every 90 days. Hey, you've been using your subscription. Awesome. It's been renewed. Keep going. So I've had one for 4 or 5 years. I had a couple that I thought I was going to use, and then I stopped using, and they got deleted. That's fine. So if you don't use them anymore, they will get removed. But that's what you would expect. So definitely take advantage of this. Contoso, yeah, of this program. I think it's just super, super valuable. So let's see. Let's go back to our tutorial here. So once you sign up for the program, you can create your tenant, and then inside your tenant, you can create your project list. And that's sort of what I did here. I came up here. So my tenant is Manage SharePoint at SharePoint.com, and I created a site called Project X. And then within that site, I created a list called Projects. So if I go to my site contents, I should have a list here called Projects, and I do. So dark theme. And just some sample data. I think they wanted, just some projects. So I've got my ABC project and my XYZ project, and then I got fancy. I did some beer tasting and whiskey tasting, and I guess I got hungry too with pizza and chips. The tutorial then says, okay, after you set up your site and your item and you add your data, the next step is to go in and then create the flow against that I'm forgetting what the send the email when a new item gets created. So when a new project gets added to this list, somebody needs to know, hey, there's a new project, there's a new beer tasting project. Maybe I want to be a part of it. So we'll come in here and look, and as they walk us through, they're saying, hey, use that Power Automate, click on that, create a flow, and then you'll be presented with a lot, some choices. One of them is going to be to send a customized email. That's exactly what we want. You'll fill in some other information. It'll create the flow for you, and then you can see an overview of the flow. You can look at the details of the flow. You can edit the details of the flow. You can test your flow. And finally, after you make modifications, whatever, test it again, see that it works. So let's do all that. I'll try to go quickly through all these steps. So back to our site, we've got our Project X and we've got our projects list. And we're going to go in and we're going to create a flow, right? So automate, create a rule. So here's this first thing that now SharePoint Online has deviated from the documentation. It's been improved. In the documentation, it said Power Automate was under Automate, which makes sense. In fact, let me just jump over here and I'll show you again, right? They set up here to click on, so that, I'm not lying to you. Scroll up, there we go, right? It said right here, click on Power Automate and then create a flow. So that's what I'm doing. There we click here, automate, but it's not there. Such is the life of a tutorial. You have to kind of work with it. I teach at the University of Maryland. I'm always assigning my students to do some of these tutorials, and I always hear back, Mr. Patrick, it's not under Automate. You said it'd be under Automate. I'm like, guys, please open your mind, use your common sense, dig around a little bit. I told you, look under the ellipses. Hey, this integrate thing looks interesting, right? Let's try that. So, yep, there it is, Power Automate, create a flow. So again, the tutorials are great, but sometimes you have to work with them to make sure you can get the steps completed. So integrate, Power Automate, create a flow. Once we do that, just like we said in the tutorial, comes up with some options, some templates that we can choose from. So here we can say, what are some of these templates? I see that there's the create customized email, which is exactly what we wanted. The other one that we're going to do later is to start the approval. There's a request and approval, request, it's a couple different options actually. If you click show more, there's even more. And if I click all the way at the bottom and say even more templates, you get the whole universe of templates that are specific to SharePoint. So there are a lot. So let's not do that though, just to give you an idea. So we're going to do send a customized email when a new item gets added. So just like we saw in the tutorial, it's now going to come up. It's going to create these connections, and you can see down here, it's using my default, who I'm logged in as, to connect to Office 365 Outlook, to my user account, to SharePoint. And if they all are copacetic, I'll get these little check marks. And I did this earlier, and actually one of them didn't. If it doesn't, if one of them, for whatever reason, maybe you're logging in and out of different tenants or anything, you can just click in here and you can change the account or refresh the account as needed. But in my case, they all were successful, so I don't need to do that. So we'll go ahead and say, yep, this looks good. Let's go create this flow. The next thing it does is it create using the template, using the default information, the SharePoint site you're on, the user that you're logged in as. It goes and it creates the flow with default settings. So the first thing I like to do is rename it. Right now the name is send a customized email when a new SharePoint list item is added, which is not a really good name, right? So let's go ahead and change that. And another pet peeve of mine is the fact that there's two edits on the screen. There's an edit over here, and then there's an edit over here. And I don't know how many times when I first started, I click one expecting the other. They do two different things. They should say, one should say edit properties, the other one should say edit flow, but no, they're just called edit. So this edit properties is where I can go and change the name, right? So we'll call this email demo flow. And we'll go ahead and save that. And now if I want to actually edit the flow itself, I use this edit. And that's going to take me to the flow code. This is low code, no code. So I'm not actually writing any code, but instead I'm doing some pointing and clicking, and I'm opening up the different GUI. I can see that there's this first item. This is the trigger. It's saying, hey, when a new item is created at this site on this list, let's do something. What do I want it to do? Well, I want it to then, this is my action, right? I want to, look, no, low code, no code. My action, so I'm going to go get my user profile because I'm going to need some of that information, specifically maybe my email. In fact, if I click on this show options, you'll see that right now it's selecting my name and my email address from my Outlook 365 profile. Up here under show options, this gives you an idea or an option to limit the columns by view. I could specify a view if I didn't need to get all, maybe this is a really wide list, 50 different columns. For performance reasons, I might want to use a view that only exposes the columns that I'm interested in. So different, depending on what you need, you can choose different options. Down here, finally, in the next action is to actually send an email. So we're going to say, hey, we're going to send an email that a new item was added. We're going to say hi. Whoever the name was, whoever triggered this, right? Not the creator, but whoever triggered it. An item was added. And then down here, we have some interesting functions going on. These are functions that are it's basically looking at the data that's coming in and saying, you know what? If that's blank, we might have to provide a different value, right? So if for some reason the trigger body is blank, then we'll use create it, or if nothing else, we don't want it to be null, which is an empty value, not to confuse with an empty string. We will use an empty string because a null we'll call null reference errors for any of my C# developers out there. So this is just a big old coalesce that says use one of these three, whichever one's not empty, pretty much. And I think we've got one of those for each one of these, right? So just trying to make sure that we don't have any null errors, right? Yeah, trigger on the name. It's interesting what we got down here, a SharePoint item, some sort of default values if the trigger's empty and the author's empty type of thing. All right. Once we have all, once we're happy with all of the different options here, we can save it. I could have done a flow checker. The flow checker is a nice way to say, hey, did you miss something? So if I left out the list name for whatever reason, flow checker is going to holler at me and say, hey, you missed something, your list is, you got to put a list name in there. I'll say, oh, whoops, my bad, I forgot. Put that back in there. projects. There we go. Flow checker's good now. Okay. And then once I've saved it and I'm happy with it, I can do a test. Now, testing is interesting. Once I hit test, it actually gives me a couple of options, right? Do I want to manually test this or do I want to automatically test it? Well, I can't automatically test it unless I've run it before. So I've got to go trigger it at least once manually. Once you have one or more manual tests, then you can reuse those inputs to do an automatic test. So if I've gone in here and done a manual test, I added a new beer tasting 2 project, I could then go in and manually trigger this flow, or I'm sorry, automatically trigger this flow with those same inputs. So let's do a manual test since that's what we got to do. We'll come in here and we'll go out to our project and we're going to add a new project to trigger that flow. And we'll call this, I've done beer and whiskey. Let's do wine. So some wine tasting. And I'll say I'll be the owner of that because I like to taste me some wine. And we'll go ahead and save that. And now we've got that new value. And now let's go. Now, one thing you might notice is there's no column here that represents the stage of the flow. That's a difference between flow and the old school 2013 and 2010 workflows. They would automatically have column and you would see what stage they're at. You don't get that here. So in order to see the status of this particular flow, I got to go back to my Power Automate site, which I've got a lot of tabs open. Let's go see if we can find there we go. Go to my flows. All right. And this is the one we just did. So I'm going to go click on that. And look at that. There's my 28-day run history. It succeeded, so that's all good. If we click on that, we'll get details of the execution of that particular flow. And I can go in here, just like I did when I was looking at the code, I can open each one of these and see some of the inputs. So this is the site we ran against. This is the list we ran against. This is the ID of the item that got created. That's the title and the owner, the modified and created dates. The username of the claim, the claim membership. That's that fancy. It's got that kind of weird notation. I can go into the JSON, the JavaScript object notation that's representative of all those values. If maybe why is department empty? Oh, I can see here department was null. That's from my SharePoint profile. And then as I go through here, I can open up the other ones as well and see similar type of information, inputs and outputs. What email was actually sent. There's the email that got created from those formulas that we set up. So it's a really cloud-based, really easy to do. To go in here, I don't need to download any tools to do this, which is nice, especially if you're on a machine that is where you don't have admin permissions. A lot of my machines at the DoD where we don't have admin permissions, but I can still go into the browser and work with my flows. As I mentioned, I could now go in here and do another test. Since I've got a manual test under my belt, now I can come in here and do an automatic test with a recently used trigger. So now I do that again. It's just going to use those same values. So I don't have to keep entering new records over and over and over again just because maybe I made a change to my flow. I want to test the code change. I don't want to have to keep adding data. So that becomes really helpful. And you can see right there, it looks like it ran successfully. And I can go right in there and just see what happened. So neat features of when you create a flow, how to test it, how to check for errors, and that kind of thing. So see any questions? I see a lot of people telling me to get off my lawn, and there's some training wheels. So that's good feedback. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. All right.
At least they think you're a kid still if they're telling you to get off their lawn.
That's right. Hey, you know what? I'll take it.
Yet youthful appearance. What can we say?
I can't stand when I go into the liquor store and they don't card me. I'm like, come on, guys, please, go through the motions. At least let me reach for it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Anyway. All right, so that was the first demo. So the other demo, if we go back to our SharePoint site, is what if we have a document library and we want to add that approval functionality to it, right? So again, with the automate. Now this is funny. So earlier we were in projects and we clicked automate, and automate was not there. It was under, I think it was integrate. Now it is under, so, I love you, Microsoft. I love you, SharePoint. You keep me on my toes. That's all I have to say. They love to move things around on me, put them in different places, even, in the same version. So under the document library, I click automate, and there is automate. And again, I can do create a flow. Same thing we saw last time. This time I'll do the request manager approval. but similar type of thing. It's going to come up with a template. It's going to already fill in the values in the template. I'm going to get my connections down here. It's going to validate that they're all still live, and if they weren't, I would click on this and then, you know, choose different values, but they all look good, so I'll go ahead and create that. Once that's created, just like we did with the previous one, we can come in here and we can look at the changes, make any modifications we want. We can rename it, right? So we come in here and say, hey, we don't like that name. In fact, if I click on edit here to edit the code, another way you could rename it is, and this is not very intuitive, but you could actually come right up here and click on it this way. So we call this approval demo flow. So that's a weird one, because I've done that before, and then I click back and it hollers at me. It's like and I said I didn't make any code changes, but it's telling me, hey, you renamed it. So I'll say, oh, whoops, I don't want to leave yet. I do want to hit save. So be careful that if you get into the habit of renaming from this particular, in this method, make sure you save it. Otherwise, you'll rename and lose it, and that's a real pain in the butt. Another interesting tidbit with this particular type of flow is that Power Automate approvals has to be provisioned. So the very first time I run this, when I kick this off, not while I'm developing, but when a user actually uses it, it's kind of like when an app gets installed on your phone. It'll say, hey, can I have permissions? Can we go ahead and do this? And you have to say yes, and it provisions it the very first time. That's what all of this is just warning us about. All right, so yeah, that's in a case where we got a warning, but not an error, so we can ignore that for the moment. Let's go in here and just check out some of these values. You know, this is what's going to pop up when someone kicks it off. They're going to write an email to the messenger, you know, approve my vacation. Down here, you know, the site, the document library. You know, if I wanted to change this, I could use in the drop down. These are all the existing lists on my site. Be careful if you're working with a flow and you are trying to move to different sites. If you switch to another window and create a new site, it won't automatically show up here. You do have to do a refresh. These are web apps, so they're not always making calls back to get the freshest and latest data. So I've had that sometimes where I'm working on something. Oh, this should be project, you know, Y. I'll go switch my window. I'll create the new list, and then I'll come back here, and it won't be showing up. And there's no really refresh here. So I literally have to hit F5 to refresh the page to get that new list to show up. So, you know, one of those tips and tricks. Down here, what is there? And these are just the different conditions where you can say, you know, hey, if the profile came, if the file's not found, we have to throw an error, you know, whatever file I'm triggering on, we have to throw a 404. But if it is, then we go get the profile and we get our manager and we send the email to the manager from Active Directory, and then do that approval process. Now, one thing I didn't do, because the templates lay all this out for me, but you could absolutely add different actions. You can add a parallel branch. You know, you can make more than just modifications to the different values of each of these triggers or actions, but you can actually go in and, you know, add different, you know, if then else type of thing. So all that is definitely there once you get comfortable with making some of these changes. So we'll go ahead and we'll save this one, just like we did the last one, and we'll test this as well. And that's the approval demo flow. So we'll test. This is, again, can't do it automatically. So this is interesting too. Yeah, can't do it automatically. It says it can't. This flow cannot be triggered for testing, but it's lying to you, right? We have to. It's that it can't be triggered by, you know, like an action such as, you know, a new item. We have to manually trigger this, which is weird that manually's grayed out, even though we have to manually trigger it. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's go back to our project. We'll take this over here so it's ready to be looked at. We go over here to this guy, and we're going to say, you know what, we need approval on this. So automate, and you can see I've done a few in the past. I've got one just called approval demo and some other ones. This was one we just did, the approval demo flow. So I'll check that off, and it'll come up again. That very first time, it's going to say, hey, we've got to get approval to install this. Now I'll do my message to my manager, please approve my vacation. Run it. And now it started that approval flow on that. And again, no particular stage, just like we did in 2013, but you could add a column, and then in your flow, you could write back to the task. So there are ways to add that functionality back. It's just you have to do it yourself. It's not automatic. We used to get in 2013 and 2010. An interesting tidbit on that particular flow. So that one was the approval demo flow. if we come in as a different user, so let's switch over here to one of my other users here. Where is my other window? There it is. So this, I'm now logged into that same tenant, but I'm not me, I'm Ed the editor. So Ed the editor, if I refresh this page, wants to do that new approval flow that I just created, which was called approval flow demo. Notice you don't see it, right? And the reason you don't see it is that that particular type of flow needs to have a setting change so that it's available to the list. So the first flow we did, which was on the projects, right? That's not one I have to kick off. It's just if I add a new item, it gets kicked off. So the list automatically has access to the flow. The list is an owner of the flow because of the type of flow. But with the document library, the list is not automatically an owner of that flow, so not everyone sees it. In this case, Ed the editor doesn't see that flow. In order for Ed the editor to see that document library type flow, I have to go back to my flow itself and make a change. So this is that approval demo workflow. We want to make this available to everyone on that particular document library. So I'll go under connections, which is not that intuitive because what I'm doing is or maybe it is, right? The list needs to be connected to the flow. You know, I'm going to make the list an owner of the flow. So under connections, I click edit and it says, hey, right now the person who created it, myself, is the owner of the flow. And so when I log in as myself, I can see that flow, but I want SharePoint and I want that list, actually not that list. Oh yeah, that site. And then I want that list, which is the documents list, to be an owner of that flow. And now when I do that, that should make anyone that has access permissions to that list see that flow, right? So I do that. I think I did it. All right, so let's go back to our Ed editor and see if that worked as expected. So we'll do a quick refresh. And now we'll see if Ed can see that flow. And look at that. So now Ed, because I went into the flow definition itself and I connected the list to it, Ed can now run that approval demo flow. So that's just another one of those gotchas you gotta watch out for. You'll go and you'll create a flow, and like the first one I did, it was just available automatically to everyone. But then you'll create one like this, and you'll say, you know, why is, you know, I created it and it works for me, and then later Ed calls and says I don't see it, and Mary calls and says I don't see it. So you really got to be careful that, you know, do your testing. Test not only as you, but get a regular user to test it to make sure everything works as you would expect. All right. Questions on any of that? And that's kind of, I had some backup slides just in case, you know, to bring that up if my Office 365 wasn't behaving, but let's see it behaved okay. Some good links to know. So tinyurl.com/SharePoint workflows talks about different concepts that, you know, from the old school to the new school. So if, you know, you knew about conditions that caused a workflow to run, you know, in SharePoint that was start options and events. Now we call them triggers. It's like translating between Spanish and English. Building blocks that allow users to customize workflows with business actions. We still call those actions, either one. Conditions are still called conditions that are available in their actions. Getting an additional input, initiation. We used to have an initiation form. Now it's trigger inputs, and you get the idea. There's this article, and I put this link up at the end too, that just goes through and kind of help bridge the gap of this is how you used to do workflows. This is what we call it in Power Automate. Some other pain points that you might encounter when you're building your new flows versus your old classic workflows. There's a 30-day run limit for flows. So you need to call them to restart the clock. I've actually created flows and then left them out there, and they just sat, and then they get deactivated. So if they don't run for a while, you might see that the activity's been suspended. There's an HTTP connector that is premium, meaning it uses you know, it's a higher license and costs more money. But there's a way around that by using the send HTTP request to SharePoint. So again, I'm trying to be frugal and circumvent, and you know, Microsoft's got enough money. Reusable workflows. You can create a central workflow, and then you can call that workflow from another workflow. So again, just about a workaround to but it's a little convoluted. There's a link that kind of describes it, where you have to use an action to search for lists that fit a criteria and then run based on a timer. It's a couple different ways you could do it. Workflow history storage, that's that column that in 2013, 2010 you got into the list automatically. You don't get that automatically in Flow and Power Automate, so you have to log information to a site if you want the user to see the status of the workflow. And finally, impersonation. They just don't have it. So if you were a fan of 2010 and running with elevated permissions to do a certain thing, we don't have that in Flow yet. So oops. Again, check out that Microsoft 365 developer program, a world of free resources for free. Doesn't cost you a dime. I think they might ask you for your credit card, but as I said, I've had 4 or 5 of these over the last 5 or 6 years, and I've never been charged. They put for Azure, they put a cap on it, but for this one, you just get that certain amount, so no fear for that. And finally, these are some of the resources. So flow.microsoft.com, that's the Power Automate website. Developer.microsoft.com/office is a bunch of information for Office developers, and you don't have to be a coder to be a developer. It's all it's not all low code, no code, but there's a lot of low code, no code solutions, and you can find a lot of tutorials and other good information there. tinyurl.com/SP workflows is that list I showed you earlier. There's a frequently asked questions for Flow that I put on there, and then for Flow licensing, I put a URL that talks about some of the licensing options, and that kind of can get hairy. So I try to steer clear of that and just give you the link and tell you, to go at it. So again, thanks for listening. Hopefully you got something out of this, got where to get started, how to get started with Power Automate and SharePoint. Feel free to reach out and check out the N365 Chicago Public Schools through the Children First Fund. We'd love to have your support. Thanks again to our sponsors. We really appreciate their money to make this possible. Check out the link to give us feedback. Use your phone. My daughter taught me this. She's like, hey, you can take your phone and you don't even need a barcode reader. You just point the picture at it and it picks it up. And now I'm fancy like the youngins, and I can do that and read that and fill out that form. If you have questions now, I'd love to have them. If not, feel free to tweet me at David E. Patrick. I love getting tweets. I usually turn them into blog articles, or in fact, my daughter and I just recently started a new series. If anyone's interested, we love to hear from you guys, the trials and tribulations of Flow and Team and all the whole Microsoft universe. But if you go out there to patrickperspective.com, if I could type, you'll see that we started this new video blog, I guess you would call it, where every couple of weeks we talk about different situations, like being stuck in the lobby in Teams, or just getting started with software development, and issues with not being the right persona in Teams, and just all sorts of stuff. So we just got it going. Feel free to go out there, subscribe, like, give us feedback, tweet, and we give away prizes there too. So we've got some hats and T-shirts. We got a mini drone that we're giving away. It's really something that we were having a lot of fun with, and we'd love for you guys to come along for the ride. So stuck in the lobby, yeah, we went on. That was like a 10-minute rant on ways on why I want to be out in the lobby. So it's good times. All right, guys. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate it. If anyone has questions, I'm here monitoring the chat. But I know for me, I'm always my cup's full, and then a day later I think of questions. So again, feel free to tweet me on Twitter at David E. Patrick. Thanks again. Take care.
Here I am, stuck in the lobby with you.
Yeah.
Stuck in the lobby with you. Yeah, this is the musical part of the show. We're coming towards the end of our presentation. Thank you very much, David.
Yeah,
that was a wonderful show. Who are you missing? We were missing someone in that show. There was a persona missing. I'm not sure. As they say, when you're doing personas, you got to make sure you have all the rules in place. Just saying, just thinking. All right. Okay, everyone, take that screenshot right now, and remember that camera trick. It works when you just take your camera up there. If you have Office Lens, guess what? It turns into a card. Ooh. Secret tips, secret tricks, and the kids showed us how to do it. Because the kids are all right. Yes, all the old man references I'm coming up with.